Thank you very much. Now we have heard three excellent presentations. They were quite diverse, but I think the message was similar in other cases. I would like to take the privilege of moderator and to challenge all three speakers. It is my understanding of the role of moderator. I would like to, it is very short questions just to enhance our debate. I'd like to start with John. I can claim that I know your work very well, but in today's presentation I found one concept which doesn't make your case stronger. In the beginning of the presentation you said that you do not like the concept non-Estonian. In your presentation you use the concept of non-dominant. Are you happy with the concept non-dominant?
Yes, because non-Estonian is essentially an ethnic classification. Non-dominant is a power classification. And I think that non-dominant is descriptive of the relative inability of a group to influence the course of events in a plural society. Whereas non-Estonian is essentially a distancing of people away. In a sense, the anthropological tradition that all cultures are equally valuable. But in a demographic sense, non-dominant clearly differentiates them according to power. So I think both descriptors are appropriate. One is evaluative, and the other is demographically or politically descriptive. They don't contradict each other, and I think they both can be used in the same conceptual framework of intercultural relations.
Okay, thank you. I did not succeed. Let us make second attempt. Professor Uslukan, your concept of integration is equal participation, but we know that there is no equal society. Hierarchy is built into the very functioning of society. So I claim that your concept of integration is utopian.
I think the idea is that you have to have the chance to the equal opportunity in main aspects, education, for example, labor market, political participation. And if we look on to Germany, we see, especially in the area of education, that the discrepancies between some group of migrants, I would not say that in every migrant group, but some group of migrants, the discrepancies begins at the elementary school. Then we have the discrepancies in the further schools, in the labor market, in the what we say, where people learn, for example, Ausbildung, learn something to I would say it afterwards. For example, the Turkish or Italian people have not the chance because their families can't support them in the same language as the German family. If you want to be successful in German education, part of the success is due to school. The other part goes to the parents. And if we are in a society in which we say the individual have to have the same chance as everyone, then the part of the parents should be compensated through the state. And this kind of compensation we haven't in an educational area. And so far, the idea of integration is that beginning life, beginning school should be under the same chances. And this kind of chances we haven't. The same aspects we have it not in the further educational area. We made a study in the expert council. I think this is very famous with different names. We have the qualification of the people was the same, just the name was different. Sometimes the young man was named as Ahmed Aydın Mustafa Yılmaz, the typical Turkish name, and sometimes his name was Lukas Heumann Tim Schultheis. It's a very typical German name. And we addressed firms, companies. Their average of the notes were 2.0. It's good. The only difference was the name. And we looked the kind of respondents. And as a Turkish young man, you have to write 7 applications. As a German, you have to write 4 applications. This kind of inequality means we have not the same chance to get a job.
Okay,
And
thank
this
you.
was my point, to have equal chances in every branches.
Thank you for your excellent answer. I feel that I failed second time. Now I have the last chance, and I have to pose a very difficult question. And I have this question. My question to Trini is, when Estonian society will be integrated?
I don't want to see this day actually, because I believe that if really some kind of extraterritorial crisis is coming, then Estonian society will show very integrated itself. But honestly, I don't want. I better prefer this negotiation and disputes and so on, with, let's say, more equal possibilities and so on, because yeah, I'm really afraid of this day.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we have time for questions from audience. Please, you are welcome to ask.
I have a question to... You need to use a microphone for the translation. I can sit down maybe. I have a question to Mr. Uslucan. I'm your fellow country person. I'm a Turkish diplomat that has been living in Tallinn for about 5 years now. I'm working at the Turkish embassy as first counselor. You mentioned in your speech that in Germany some people claim there's no enlightenment in Islam. Actually, a few years back, there was another conference here organized by the French embassy, and a lady professor of Bulgarian origin, who is a French citizen, also claimed that there was no secularization process in Islam. But you and I, we both know very well that beginning from 1923, with the proclamation of the Turkish Republic by Atatürk, an enlightenment process as well as a secularization process had already started in Islam. And it was also embraced by a lot of Muslim communities all over the world, even if they had been living under the rule of a lot of Western powers. In my view, this kind of process has never been supported by the Western powers, and it was just the opposite. I'm not going to name the countries, but they have even helped so-called Islamic revolutions of mullahs in order to erase almost everything about enlightenment in Islam, secularization in Islam, so that they could have a grip of the Muslim countries, Muslim societies, and rule them from outside. Then another disaster came with the proliferation of communism and socialist ideas all over the world decades ago. In order to stop this kind of proliferation, they started to create small fires, like setting up of cults, setting up of sects, and creating divisions in Islam. And then the fire spread almost everywhere in the world. So this is one comment I wanted to make, because as a diplomat, as a Muslim, as a Turkish citizen, I'm really fed up with hearing Islam and Muslim countries and Muslims in general being blamed so much for something they didn't do.
Can I answer? It was not my point. It was analysis of one of the main discourse lines in the media is just this point that Islam has no enlightenment and...
Also among the
yes.
academics,
yes.
among professors.
I think especially for Germany, we have this kind of seeing Muslims as a homogeneous group is not right. Turkish one are more secular, for example, than coming from Northern Africa or from Lebanon, and so on. Between the Turkish, we have different groups too. DİTİB Muslims are seen more as secular than so-called Milli Görüş. So I was just giving one of the main discourse lines in media. Especially between the academics, I wouldn't say that everyone is the same line. I know a very famous German Arabist, Thomas Bauer, who wrote a very famous book about the ambiguity in Islam, another history of Islam. And in this book, he shows that Islam has a great tradition to dealing with ambiguity. But since the beginning of the 19th century, with more, they adopt the European view of being coherent, being without contradiction. And so they shape themselves as European wants to see Islam, as a reaction to the European view of Islam. So there is a discussion about the ambiguities in Islam too, but you are right insofar that some of the advisor of politics between the scientists have this kind of view on Islam as a block, as a unchangeable, and as an opposite to modern European life.
Thank you. Please, other questions? Please. No problem.
I have a question to Trine. Actually, I intend to disagree with your last conclusion about the, let's say, having some kind of media involvement and at the same time not talking about how the people feel about it. I think that the fact what you select for your informational basis will give a rather clear picture how you think. And maybe I misunderstood you, but you claim that they are not so connected anymore, these two things.
Yeah, thank you for your question and yes, opportunity to explain. My argument is that they are connected in various ways. And only taking the poor, let's say, factor of that somebody is watching something does not say us very much about the reception, the actual reception. I have done also reception studies, but it was not time to speak about them. So I have this kind of data as well. What I am arguing against is essentializing the poor fact that somebody is following certain channels as a sign of I don't know, loyalties or whatever. Yeah.
Thank you. We have time for last question. Please.
Thank you. This is more like a comment, actually. It was very interesting, Trine, on your slides about the socially passive group. From the policymaker point of view, this is the most problematic group because it's impossible to reach them. From the integration policy point of view, Estonian integration policy point of view, this is very problematic group. Unfortunately, these are the people with undetermined citizenship. These are the people we mostly need to reach out, and they are the hardest to be reached out. So I don't know if you could solve the puzzle of Estonian integration policy, how to reach those people, how to communicate with them.
Yes, thank you for the question. Actually, one of the main ways is still education, because the proportion of young men who have dropped out with lower than secondary education is quite significant there. So actually education, avoiding dropping out from the secondary school, it's quite a strongly gendered issue as well. So we have to take care of young Russian men, actually.
This is a very good point to finish this section. Please join me thanking our speakers.